So, okay. Hi, everybody. State Representative Jason Doucette here. Thank you for joining us for this discussion today, which I hope will be informative for everybody. Certainly, I am watching here. I'll see any questions. We're going to kind of talk, which I'm thinking will probably take about maybe 15 minutes or so, and then we'll take questions after that. So just type them here in the chat comments, and I will see them. And actually, I did just see one question, which I was going to mention, so I'll take that question now. Yeah, we will save this on the Facebook page and make sure that it's posted there so people can circle back. And we'll also record it on Zoom as well. Or actually, Sarah, you're recording it on Zoom, right?
Yeah, and I'll make it available on my YouTube channel.
I haven't pressed record yet, so Sarah's going to post it as well. Again, I'm State Representative Jason Doucette. Most of you watching will know that I am State Representative for the 13th House District, which is Manchester and the northern part of Glastonbury. But if you're watching from somewhere else, welcome. This topic today is relevant to everyone everywhere across Connecticut, and actually we'll touch on sort of the national picture as well. There's a lot of federal law and federal programs that apply to the situation here as it pertains to homeowners and renters. This is one I think that is important to get the message out and get some information out. With everything going on right now, we have stuff thrown at us every day, and a lot of folks understandably preoccupied with the public health situation, when they're going to get back to work, when the kids are going to get back to school, and all of that stuff. And not to mention just trying to stay safe and healthy, and hope everybody out there is safe and healthy and that your families are as well. This is one topic that's very important for most people. It's their largest living expense. I think there's a great deal of uncertainty out there. And while there are relief programs, which we're going to talk about today, that are available, it's very important to know what some of the pitfalls are of that, thinking that you have the ability to put off your rent or mortgage payment. But we want to talk about the implications of doing that. And if you do elect to do that, to defer those payments, what you can expect and what you should be doing as a homeowner or a renter at the end of that period, whether it's June 1st, July 1st, and we're going to talk about some of the dates with those as we go forward. So I am joined today by two individuals who are very well versed on the subject of mortgages and rents. First, we've got Jeff Gentes. Jeff is from the Connecticut Fair Housing Center. Hello, Jeff. Oh, Jeff, you're on mute. You're on mute. Common Zoom mistake. Yep, there you are.
The cat's meowing down to a minute. Yes, I represent Doucette. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, yeah, why don't just real quickly introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what the Connecticut Fair Housing Center does.
Sure. The center is a statewide nonprofit who works on housing discrimination and foreclosure prevention issues. We have a lot of information on our website and resources for homeowners to learn not just about what's happening with COVID-19 and the effect on rents and mortgages, but also how to navigate the foreclosure process, what to do if you suspect you've been a victim of housing discrimination. And all of that's available at ctfairhousing.org. And then in my spare time, I also have a second job. I co-supervise a clinic at Yale Law School, where some of the students have been very helpful in putting together training materials for homeowners as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. All right, and I'm also joined by attorney Sarah Porous. Sarah was a colleague, a classmate of mine at UConn Law School way back in the day. She's an attorney in private practice located in West Hartford. And the reason I'm so happy that she's joining us today is because She dedicates her practice to consumer issues, foreclosure defense, helping individual consumers sort of navigate the foreclosure process. She's an expert on it, does a lot of writing, and is out there online. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having both of us today. And I think Jeff would agree that as soon as we knew that people were going to not be able to go to work, that we knew that people were not going to be able to pay their rent or their mortgage. And we've been emailing back and forth, a group of us who represent homeowners, whether it's representing tenants or homeowners who have mortgages. We've been very concerned and trying to stay on top of the day-to-day, hour-by-hour changes, especially the first couple of weeks after the shutdown that were happening. And so there have been some programs that have come out of this. And I don't want anybody watching to think there's any money coming their way. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. No one's handing you a check as far as being able to specifically help you with your rent or your mortgage. Okay, the programs that are available are more to manage whether or not banks can kick you out of your house, or your landlord can kick you out of your apartment. So that's really the protection that's being offered, if you'll call it an offer. So there's sort of three main categories of what you might fall into. I'm just going to talk about homeowners, if I can jump right into talking about that part. Homeowners with mortgages. So either you have the kind of loan that's backed by the US government, and there's particular guidelines on what those lenders and the servicers for those loans can do and can't do. Or you have a loan through a bank or a credit union that's participating in our state, a state program. Let's call it a program, but the governor has strongly encouraged certain lenders here in Connecticut, credit unions, smaller banks, to participate in a moratorium, a stay, or just a hands-off people for now, who might already be behind or who are now falling behind. And then there's another category of people who don't fall into either of those. And so I have recommendations that apply to everybody, no matter what category you fall in. And then you get more protections if you have a loan that's government backed, and slightly fewer protections if you are in that second category, credit unions and smaller banks. And then you're really at the mercy of your lender if you are in that third category where you're not government backed, or you don't have a loan with a local credit union or bank.
So let's stop and walk through that a little bit. So the first category, again, are federally backed loans, and this was under the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act, that there were certain protections provided. Now, first of all, you need to determine whether or not you have a federally backed loan. And we think it's probably somewhere around 70% of homeowners nationwide. I don't know the precise number in Connecticut, but it's probably somewhere around there, have a federally backed mortgage. So this is a mortgage that is guaranteed by the federal government or one of the GSEs in some way. That's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or there are actual government loans like an FHA loan, a VA loan, a USDA loan. Those are all federally backed loans and would be subject to the protections under the Federal CARES Act. And that act provides a automatic, and Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, automatic forbearance upon request for up to 6 months, and the potential to extend it out even further for 12 months. Is that correct?
Correct. And so the procedure there, and really applies to anyone asking for any assistance from their mortgage, no matter what kind of mortgage they have, would be to contact your mortgage servicer, the company that you've been paying your payments to. Give them a call. I don't know that any of them have a way to do it online. But give them a call, expect to be on hold, because millions of people are now calling their banks, and keep track in some way in writing of who you speak to, date and time, the name of the representative, and then what the discussion was. Now you're allowed to tell them, I need assistance, I can't pay my mortgage, say the month of April or the month of May, or whatever months you don't think you can pay, and you shouldn't need to explain more than saying we've lost some income because of the COVID crisis. They're not allowed to demand much more of you at that point. And I don't think they will. But definitely keep track of the date and time you spoke to someone, who you spoke to, and what was said. And any letter that they send you in response to this conversation you have, this request, keep it. And it may give you a payment plan. It may just be a letter saying you're okay for now until this date, but hang on to that letter.
So then let's just say again that you do connect with your servicer that way. What can you expect in terms of response? What are you seeing in the cases that you've gotten involved with thus far? Are they going to simply say, okay, we're going to permit you not to make a payment for some period of time? Or are they going to offer to do something else to sort of modify the terms of your loan and put those payments on the back end? Or are you seeing both?
Well, with the government-backed loans, they're going to very likely give you at least 6 months, unless, of course, you say, I don't need that much time or what have you. And I don't think I know what they're doing. I don't think there's a specific cookie cutter way they're going to handle everybody's loan at the end of that 6-month or 12-month forbearance period. I think at the end of the loan, it's going to look like an individual analysis or review of what can be paid back at what rate, how many months you'll have to pay it back, or whether or not they will automatically modify you under maybe a flex mod program, which is a program available right now under Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or whether they will encourage you to send in your financial information for prior months and then do a mortgage modification, which is up until COVID started. If you were behind on your loan, that was a typical procedure. Is if you were behind and you needed to catch up, you could send in pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns, proof of income, financial statement of income and expenses, and your servicer would review you for various programs, including modifying how many more months you have to pay, how many more months or years, changing your interest rate, things like that. So government-backed loans that have been in forbearance are very likely to be treated like that. If you're in that second category where you're under more of a 90-day only through the state, where it's a smaller loan or a credit union, smaller bank or credit union, the governor announced a few weeks ago that you're going to have a 90-day break on your mortgage, and that's not true. I just want to emphasize, everyone who needs time to pay payments, who can't pay, either they couldn't pay in April, now can't pay in May, can't pay in June, call your servicer as soon as you can and have the conversation. And if you've got one of these local banks or credit unions, you're likely only to get a 90-day break. And then at the end of that, and some servicers are also, just that aren't government backed, are giving you like 3 months off, but they're sending letters. What I've seen is they're sending letters that say, and this was end of March, I was seeing letters that said 0 payment for April, 0 payment for May, 0 payment for June. And July, you get to pay 4 months of your payments. You get to pay April, May, and June, and your July payment. Right. So again, record any, or note down notes from any conversation you have with your mortgage servicer. Keep those notes. Keep any letters they send you or any statements with that kind of payment plan. And as your months of forbearance are used up, contact your servicer again with an update. You may still not be able to pay come July or August, not even your regular monthly mortgage payment, and they may extend your forbearance, or they may have another option for you at that point. But what I don't want to see, and Jeff and I have gone back and forth about what we think is going to happen, is if someone just calls, says, I can't pay, the bank says, okay, that's fine, and then they hang up, and then in July, August, September, we're going to get calls from people who said, my bank said it was okay, I didn't pay. And we're going to say, well, it's your word against theirs. And we don't want that to be the case.
Now you have 4 months.
We want you to record the date and the time, the person who you spoke to, exactly what was said, keep any letters they send you, so that they can't pull that.
Right. And so I think that's the most important message really on this, is just to stay on top of it. We don't want to see anybody obviously in a position where they put it out of sight and out of mind for a period of 3 months, and then all of a sudden get that statement from their servicer in the mail asking for 4 months worth of payments. Now, I will tell you that there is guidance from the federal FHFA, which is sort of the regulatory agency that oversees the GSEs. And there is also, as I understand, most of the Connecticut banks participating in the Connecticut program have said in one way or another that they are willing to work with borrowers to put those payments on the back end of the loans and not be demanding those 4 months of payment. So I don't think, I certainly hope that we don't see people who are in that position at the end of that forbearance period. But you need to stay on top of it, number one. If you believe that you are having a problem and you're not really getting through, or your needs are not being acknowledged by your servicer, and you think they may be running afoul of some of the provisions, stipulations of the new CARES Act or this program with the state, you can contact the Department of Banking. You should contact the Department of Banking and let them know what you're experiencing there. But again, just stay on top of it is the one moral of the story, that it's not going to be treated the same everywhere. Again, you have the federal loans, and and I can post some of these, there are some lookup websites that you can go to see if your loan, if you don't know, likely if you close with a private mortgage company or mortgage broker, they may have subsequently sold the loan to someone else. You don't know who actually owns or guarantees your loan. There are some lookup services that we could post. And then again, the state loans are going to be our state, local banks and credit unions. That's, if the federal loans are 70% of the market, let's say that's 20% of the market, just to throw a number out there. And then again, as Sarah alluded to, there's probably a much smaller segment of the market where you may have a loan that doesn't fit, that it's a local institution that isn't participating in the program, or it's some other institution that's neither federal or participating in the state program. And then again, there's really no playbook for them. You've got to appeal to that servicer and make your case to them. Again, hopefully we're all rowing in the same direction on this, and we're all kind of working together as an economy, as a society to try to get through this. But you've got to stay on top of it as a homeowner. Wanted to move on real quick. So if you are in distress and you find yourself in a situation where you're in foreclosure, or there's a demand made upon you by the bank, we're just going to touch briefly on what's happening there. So there have been some orders of both the governor and within the judicial branch of the state. I'm going to ask Jeff to tell us kind of what's happening in the court system with regard to foreclosures right now.
Sure. So if you are already in foreclosure, nothing has been moving forward. There's been no court hearings, no mediations, and there's no real time frame for when those will start up again. We know, of course, the governor talked about reopening Connecticut's economy. The courts are thinking about that as well. How can they bring people back into the courthouse in a way that still reflects appropriate social distancing and appropriate safety? So nothing's happening in the courts right now on foreclosures or evictions right now. However, banks and servicers that are not covered by the moratorium, and even some that are, have been filing foreclosures since the public health emergency was declared about 7 weeks ago. So we've got now more than 850 foreclosures have been filed since that time. They're just sitting there, and it's frankly difficult to file anything in your case. You'd have to mail it to the correct courthouse and then wait for someone to fetch it and then upload it to the system. And there's just very few clerks there at all at the courthouse. They're trying to limit how many people can be in the courthouse right now working. So not much is happening. Things are on pause. And if you already had a foreclosure and you lost your house, or if you've lost your eviction in some way, you're not going to be kicked out with a marshal. A marshal is not going to kick you out until at least June 1st. That date was recently extended from May 1st today out to June 1st. And for now, that's the date that applies. And if you had a judgment before, you may end up facing you got a strict foreclosure. It's called a law day that you're getting. It's a June 2nd law day now, nothing earlier than that. And for sales, it'd be June 25th.
July 25th. July 25th.
Sorry, July 25th. Thank you. Those dates could be extended. by the courts automatically at some point, but we don't know that. And if you're coming up on those dates, it's a couple weeks out. You're in the case of you've already had a judgment issued and a marshal serves you with something, you got to go to figure out some way to file something with the courthouse to put something in saying, here's why you need more time. Likewise, if you're facing a law day or a sale day, you need to get something into the court so that you're asking for more time, and here's why you need more time.
Jeff, was that date is still June 2nd, is that right? For the
June 2nd, yeah, June 2nd for law days.
Okay,
And
so that's if you're a strict foreclosure. There are two types of judicial foreclosure in Connecticut. The second is foreclosure by sale, and that's where you have a sign on your front lawn and there's actually technically an auction that's conducted. Those have been extended out and won't happen before July 25th, right? Okay.
So even if your original sale date or your law day had been back in March, late March or April or May, they're now being pushed out. So,
okay.
And it may not even be on your court docket, but the court's issued a blanket order in those dates.
All right, so we're going to shift real quick to the situation for renters, okay? And again, if you have questions on mortgages, we'll take them at the end. We're taking them down here, and we'll take them at the end. So the situation for renters, again, there was, as I'm shuffling my papers around here, an executive order from the governor that talked about the delaying of rent payments. Jeff, why don't you run through real quick what those dates are?
Sure. So April, essentially, for April rent, if you weren't able to pay, you had a 60-day grace period automatically. So it wouldn't come due until June. For May, you've got a 60-day grace period if you ask for it in writing. Ideally, you have a letter, a copy of something that you keep sending to your landlord or your property management company, or technically a text applies. So save your screenshots, especially if you've communicated with your landlord the way in the past, that works, or an email, any of those kinds of things. And we have resources on our website for sending those kinds of grace period requests. But like Sarah mentioned before, at this point, there's nothing that would help you pay that rent. So it would still be due, and evictions have been held off, and evictions are not supposed to be started until at the earliest July 1st, though because of the federal programs, could be later in July or even August. But nevertheless, there's not something in place right now to help you pay any back rent. So if you are behind, or if you can pay, pay. And if you can't, know that while you're not in immediate danger of eviction, you'll have to work out something with your landlord down the line.
Okay, so again, today's May 1st. So if your May rent if you have not yet paid your May rent, you're going to need to request in writing from your landlord an extension of that. And basically state a reason as well, correct? To confirm that it's involved
Right.
because of loss of income or some other circumstances related to COVID.
Exactly. And,
Okay.
and during that period, your landlord should not charge you with any late fees that they might normally charge outside of this pandemic.
Okay. And again, there are some federal programs, true. So, and this may be a little bit more of a limited application for some people, and it requires a few extra steps. But if your home that you rent a unit in is backed by a mortgage, again from a government loan, there are additional protections for that. Is that correct?
That's right. The problem for tenants is it's really hard to figure out,
Right.
If what kind of mortgage your landlord holds. There might be other kinds of federal programs. If you have a Section 8 voucher, if it has certain kinds of HUD funding with your program, all those are difficult to nail down. But those are technically all qualify for a longer moratorium on when your landlord can start an eviction.
Okay. All right. But again, the moral of the story here is that, again, while you can defer those payments if you follow the guidelines of what's been provided, again, automatic April, May, if you provide a reason. Come June 1, there's nothing automatic that would defer or somehow forgive those payments that are due, correct?
Right.
Right. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. Security deposit. If you have a security deposit, that can always be used and applied towards rent at the end of your lease term, right? But there is a specific provision about security deposits, but that only applies if you have 2 months of a security deposit, right?
Yeah. Anything that's over a month, you can ask to have that extra portion from up to 2 months applied to your rent.
Yeah, Jeff, I think we lost Representative Doucette. I'm sure he'll log back in. What have we not covered, or what, fill in the blanks of anything I forgot to mention in the meantime?
No, I wanted to underscore the what you'd said about keeping notes and keeping correspondence. It will help if, assume something's going to go wrong. Hopefully not, but assume something's going to go wrong. And if it does, someone who can help you down the line, be it a lawyer or housing counselor, will be in the best position to help you if you've gotten notes down. And there's going to be a lot of people that you talk to. There's a lot to manage right now. It's difficult to keep track of what's going on. So just date, who you spoke with, what did they say, what did you do next? Did you have to send in any paperwork? Did you get paperwork from your mortgage company? All those kinds of things are very helpful. And I'm sure Sarah agrees.
Well, I appreciate you confirming that that's my instinct. And between the two of us, I'm the more optimistic of us. Every time you and I talk, you surprise me with how, and I guess maybe you and your clients have been burned more and in different ways than mine have been, but by banks. But again, it just makes it so much easier for you and me to help people later when there's documentation of what happened. You passed the baton to us and we kept going.
Thank you.
Doucette, so
isn't technology wonderful?
Yeah, we missed you. So Jeff, what else about being a tenant? I think it is hard when you don't know, you're going to ask your landlord for help and your landlord's going to say, I don't have to give you help. What should people say or do at that point?
Well, I think the question then becomes, it may be, and people are still trying to figure this out, is if a time comes and you find yourself, well, I guess let me say it in two different parts. If you find yourself in an eviction prior to July 1st, what many judges have done, and we've seen it in Hartford and New Haven, Norwalk and Bridgeport, those housing courts, the judges are going in and saying, just dismissing the eviction outright, saying this is not proper right now, unless you're claiming that the tenant is a serious nuisance, which is, like you'd think, more than a nuisance and something that's essentially a threat to health and safety of other tenants or to the landlord in some way. The eviction's improper, and those have been dismissed. The question's going to come up for somebody who finds themselves, they can't work something out, and if a landlord starts an eviction in July, as opposed to, say, late August, which is sort of the latest time that these moratorium can extend on the federal-backed loans that Representative Doucette referenced earlier, filing something with the aid of lawyers and with the aid of legal advice, whether it's perhaps statewide legal services that you call to find out, hey, what can I do to figure out if my landlord should have waited to start this eviction? And then maybe those, couple weeks that you get to find out that question will say, oh no, this eviction was improper, or gives you that time to work something out with your landlord. Lord willing, you're back to work. Things are getting back in shape. The state's opening up in a safe way, and maybe you'll be able to make up that difference.
And one hint that we definitely need to emphasize is any amounts you can or could pay toward rent or mortgage, maybe make those payments and offer to pay that as part of any forbearance plan for a mortgage or any break your landlord's going to give you, because that way you'll have less to make up for later. It's not that you can go 3 months and never have to make these payments. They will be owed down the road, and any money you have either saved or that you've put towards those payments in the short term will make it easier for you to catch up later. And right, you would agree that that is something people can do if they can.
If you have a line of communication open and you've got a good landlord, maybe the landlord's getting a break on their mortgage, you know, or maybe the landlord's using common sense and realizing with unemployment as high as it is right now, that it's not as if there's a huge number of willing paying tenants who could take your place. So they may have less of an incentive to proceed with an eviction,
Right.
even if there weren't.
And I think that's important to, from the policymaker perspective. Hopefully, I think we've learned something from the last financial downturn, which was precipitated obviously by different events, but was similar in the way that it affected people's finances, ability to pay back their mortgages and so forth. And, what happened then, of course, is the whole system froze up. Some large financial institutions got bailed out, some went under, but certainly there was a lot of pain for homeowners with that. And that didn't really help anybody ultimately. Even those banks that were left holding, mortgages, and a lot of them were subprime mortgages, different types of, mortgage products that we don't have anymore. Obviously that the whole financial system was kind of seized up by that. And it went right on down to the average homeowner as well. So
can I just, because I'm sure a lot of people watching and your constituents, this may be a concern for them as well, especially if they're a small business owner, because I'm starting to get calls from small business owners who, who's the landlord of their office is now asking for payment and things like that. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but and I don't know that there's a specific carve out for businesses that are having trouble paying their rent or their mortgage. And just know that still keep track of your communications with your landlord, keep anything you get in writing, and do your best to work something out in the short term at least.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. There is currently not anything pertaining to commercial leases, obviously, I think that's going to be that's going to be a problem, and we're going to see a lot of distress there in that market as well. So I was just going to ask before we kind of kick it over and see if there are any questions. Segue into, again, what do you see as possible next steps, solutions? As I alluded to in the last financial downturn, we had some mortgage modification programs, federal mortgage modification programs, and unfortunately those didn't seem to work or be utilized as well as I think we had hoped initially when they were rolled out. What fixes the situation? Because June 1's coming, July, August 1, and I think people are still going to be in the position where they're going to be behind and possibly not have a chance to make it up. So, what do you see? I mean, is a modification program, you mentioned, Sarah, the flex modification, is that something that you see being utilized? Do we need kind of a larger wholesale solution? I mean, I think we probably do need to see a federal solution to it.
I wanted to see what Jeff's initial response was going to be to that question before I chime in with my guess, because it's really a guess at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we have it's on one hand and on the other. On one hand, the federal government and the agencies that back it took them several years, but they've managed to put into place a reasonably straightforward way of offering workout programs in a way that can be administered by the mortgage companies who hold their mortgages. So that's better, and we're in a better spot than we were, in a better paradigm around loan workouts than we were 12 years ago. On the other hand, one of the things that was offered under last, the number of mortgages that went into foreclosure years ago, a lot of them, you could modify the payment terms significantly to offer real relief to people with reduced income. The issue with the mortgages common these days is that the terms are by and large pretty decent. we don't see too many loans these days that are, even north of 6%, never mind 5. And it just makes sense. If you had a loan last decade that was at 9% and you can modify it down to 2, you're taking quite a bit off the monthly payment. These days, you get someone who sees us and they have a 4.5% mortgage. Maybe the bank can kick it out 40 years. Maybe they can do certain things, but they're not talking about a significant payment adjustment.
Right.
If what you're suffering from is a longer term reduction in income as opposed to getting back on your feet.
Right. Okay. All right. I was going to kick it over to questions. I'm looking here. We got on a little late. Anybody who's still watching have any questions?
I just wanted to promote some of the help that is available. There's a housing clinic, the Connecticut Judicial branch, the courts really do a good job of offering assistance sort of on a first come, first served basis, in some places weekly, to tenants and to homeowners who find themselves behind on their rent, behind on their mortgages, or already in foreclosure, already in eviction. And attorneys like Jeff and I and our colleagues will man these tables on a weekly basis or monthly, and you can come in and talk to us. But if you're already served with papers, to me, it's like, get ahead of that. Don't get to be 3 months or 6 months behind. You may have already been behind when this started. You may already have not paid your December, January, February payment. And so you might be the first person that gets served with a foreclosure, and there may not be the same COVID excuses or defenses that you could raise because you already were behind, whether it was rent or mortgage. So keep an eye on that. Do what you can to keep, be prepared to raise that, to explain what's going on, to get your finances together as best you can while if you are at home and not working. Use that time to create a household budget, tighten up where your money was going before, see if, right, you see what I'm saying, Jeff, you can chime in on advice around this. It's like, anticipate that you may be next if you already were behind for one reason or another.
Yeah, I mean, plan as if, get ahead of things, plan as if things may not go smoothly. The advice tables that Sarah mentioned, they will probably start again when the courthouse is open or soon afterwards. We don't know yet. In the meantime, and also just for a list of resources like that and others, Representative Doucette mentioned the Department of Banking. That's the State Department of Banking. It has a mortgage foreclosure assistance hotline that is staffed by people who dedicate themselves to learning what resources may help be available for you. They may be able to help you get in contact with your mortgage company if you're having problems getting through. They may be able to point you towards resources that you may just not be familiar with. We've seen, for instance, the long lines outside of Rensselaer Field, people looking for food assistance, resources that you haven't had to tap into before. They'll know about all the kinds of resources that may be out there for helping any questions that you may have.
Yep.
And then the last plug for our website, ctfairhousing.org, for other questions and answers that you may have.
I mean, I think that I think this is a good reason to delay eviction, to delay foreclosure, for sure. I think the difference between what happened 12 years ago and now is that homeowners then were treated like it was their fault. And I think it'll be refreshing to see how courts treat this now, where it's absolutely not any individual's fault that this whole thing happened, and all of us are affected. There was a lot of us who were not affected, like personally, if we didn't have trouble paying our mortgages and didn't have a subprime mortgage 12 years ago. But now everybody is affected one way or the other. The ripple effect hits us all of this financially and otherwise. And so I think but don't rely on that. If you go into court later, if you're going to speak to a judge, plead your case, if you will, make sure you don't leave it open-ended. Be able to provide a date you will start working, be able to provide a date you will plan or be able to start repaying your mortgage or your rent. Be very clear and specific instead of just saying, well, Your Honor, I couldn't help it. That isn't going to get you as far as looking like you're on top of it, looking like you're more prepared, like you understand it's hard for your landlord or your mortgage company, but you're willing to come to the table with something. I think that will go a long way in getting getting what you asked for, which is probably going to be asking for more time.
Okay. All right. We did have one question here. It says, Barbara, I am a self-pay client at a sober house. Does the same grace period apply for me? And also, do I have the same protection of a renter of an apartment has? I think she would. I would think that's still sort of a regular landlord-tenant situation, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the. I'm not sure about that. I would. I'd suggest if she calls my office, it's 860-247-4400. Leave a message. Someone will get you back to you early next week, and then just get some facts out. What kind of lease that you have and what kind of arrangement that you have to make sure there are. I mean, I'm personally more familiar with issues around shelters and other dorms and other exceptions to the landlord-tenant rules that apply. But yeah, I would suggest she give our office a call.
If it's sort of a private pay situation where there's a lease or some sort of agreement with a landlord who's probably a nonprofit organization or what have you, I would expect that the answer is yes, probably. But yeah, that's certainly you should seek assistance with that.
Yeah, and who knows what kind of, I mean, we might be talking CARES Act too, in term with what might apply for an eviction moratorium there.
Right. Okay. All right. I think that's it for now. We might have some follow-up. Again, this is going to be recorded and available to view on Facebook. I'll post links to get in touch with both of these fine people. Obviously, everyone here should know where to find me if you live in my district, or again, even if not, and you want to reach out with any specific questions that we can help point you to the right resources. Happy to help with that. And again, the Department of Banking is a resource for all mortgage issues. The Judicial branch has resources for renters and lease issues. And that's it for now. So guys, thank you. Thank you so much
Thanks for doing this.
Participating in this. It's important. And again, we want everyone to stay on top of this. Today's May 1st, so the May rent and mortgage is due, and come June 1st, we're gonna definitely see some changes happening. And if not, we're gonna have to sort of revisit this perhaps at that point. So again, thanks everybody for signing on. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.